What's up, fam? So, in honor of talking about topics that are more serious and not as fun, today's topic is going to be about, as the title says, dealing with people that are under the category of cluster B personality disorders. So, this video is to sort of, I want you to be heard, I want you to feel heard, I want you to feel seen. And I want to validate that you are not crazy. You were just dealing with someone that had a personality disorder under cluster B, whether that is BPD, NPD, whatever the case is. Cluster C is technically avoidant, but avoidant attachment disorder technically manifests in a lot of these other types as well, NPD or BPD. So I want to start by saying, let's define cluster B. Cluster B is a type of personality disorder. Personality disorder, right? Mental health is a known problem everyone is super aware about. There's depression, anxiety, PTSD, bipolar, all these different things, right? Cluster B disorders are things such as borderline personality disorder or narcissistic personality disorder, right? I know there's another one, histrionic personality disorder is there too. I'm not going to talk about that too much. I'm just going to focus on BPD and NPD for today. And the reason I want to dial in on these two so much is because the nature of dealing with such a person is so dehumanizing, and it leaves people in absolute shambles, and it ultimately ruins lives. So I just want this to be out there for the benefit of you guys, and I want to, this there's no ultimate goal. I just want to yap, okay? So dealing with someone with BPD or NPD can leave someone with absolutely negative self-worth, right? If you seem to be someone that's usually pretty confident and usually, you have a certain self-esteem, right? When you get stuck with someone that has such personality disorder, it leaves you feeling like absolutely nothing, right? So, and there's so many reasons for this, right? A lot of times with NPD, okay, first of all, most of the time, people that have these disorders don't even know it, right? So that makes everything all the more difficult, okay? A lot of times what will happen is that this person knows that they have some sort of mental, something going on mentally. Something's not right, some instability going on, and they'll recognize that, but they can't quite put a finger on what it is, right? So, or they'll get misdiagnosed, right? A lot of the time, some people will say they have autism, ADHD, bipolar, panic disorder. These are super, super commonly misdiagnosed because I don't know many professionals that have, that really diagnose borderline and NPD. These are I don't know anyone personally. So this is sort of to raise awareness about that too. So when dealing with such people, especially a narcissist, some of the times when it comes to narcissism, there's obvious, there's clear this person is a narcissist, and then there's also the cases where people are sort of I think it's called covert narcissism, right, or something, whatever the term is, where it's not super clear, right? And so when it comes to situations with these people, your self-worth will get diminished because a lot of times, anytime, I've mentioned this in other videos, a lot of times when you express any ounce of self-esteem, any ounce of confidence, that would typically be pretty desirable in a mate, people that struggle with this will ultimately try to take this sense of self and confidence away, right? So this is part of their, whether it's knowingly or not. Most of the times when people are doing these things, it's completely not knowingly. They'll try to just, for example, it's the constant humbling, right? in no situation with any relationship that you have, whether it's your parents, whether it's your significant other, whether it's your homies, whether whoever it is, you should never feel like you're constantly being humbled by someone, right? And so you should constantly feel like you're being, uplifted. You should constantly feel like you're there, like you should constantly feel before the relationship, when you got into this relationship, if you were a confident person and you had a lot of self-esteem, that should only be going up throughout the relationship, okay? And so when someone is like, for example, let's say I'm posting a video like this, right? Or let's say I post a picture and I look like this, and someone makes a backhanded comment like, look at this thirst trap you're posting, right? Subtle things like this, and I'm not saying that's like a super mean thing. Subtle things like that will chip away at someone's self-worth and ultimately leave them feeling like nothing, right? And so this is just, unfortunately, one, problem that a lot of people deal with. On top of this, there's not to mention all the gaslighting, right? Gaslighting is a huge, huge, huge problem when it comes to people dealing with this type of disorder, right? Half the times people will not even know they're gaslighting. And so a lot of times they'll completely invalidate your feelings. It's almost like you're dealing with two different people, and that's the scariest part, is because one side of this person is trying to get you to open up, it's trying to get you to create a safe environment and things like that, and the other side of this person uses all this that they created against you. So they will totally invalidate your feelings. They will make you feel like whatever you are saying or whatever topic, whatever issue you're bringing up is just not valid, right? And so for whatever reason, a lot of times it'll be because of your delivery, right? And so this is a sort of like a teaser into reactive abuse, right? If people dealing with people with NPD, this is the most common with people with NPD. Reactive abuse is huge when it comes to these people, right? So a lot of times people with NPD will push your buttons, constantly push. They know when they're pushing, until you break, and they'll use this break that when you totally freak out and you lose it because they've been just driving you insane. They'll use this break to say like, oh, look at you, see, you're actually super this, you're super X, you're super Y, you're super Z. And so that is a form of reactive abuse. And so we talked about gaslighting, we talked about invalidating experiences, we talked about dealing with two different people. Another thing when it comes to this is that when it comes to one side of this person that constantly wants all this information about you, constantly wants you to open up, constantly wants you to bring things to them, you have to be really careful, because a lot of times people that unknowingly have this disorder will completely use that against you, whether it's your family history, whether it's some issue that they know that you have, because no one's perfect, right? I'm not saying anyone's perfect. Problem is with this sort of people is that they'll create the illusion that it's a safe environment and you can express whatever you need, and then turn over and just use all those issues against you, which is yet another form of abuse, right? Another common thing that happens with a lot of these people is a ridiculous amount of love bombing, right? So in the beginning of the relationship, it'll be constant I love yous, huge gifts, like massive expensive gifts that you're like, what the heck is this for, right? That's like just come out of nowhere. These are all forms of love bombing, and so whether they know they're doing it or not, and so you'll feel like, oh, this is awesome, this is exactly what I've been looking for my whole life, like this is great. Unknowingly that it's just a form of abuse. It's just a form of love bombing for them to gain leverage over some sort of thing. So you have to be really careful when it comes to being in relationships with this. The problem is they can become really addicting, right? So as much as you know that it's not right to be in certain situations and relationships with people like this, it's almost impossible to pull yourself out of it, right? Because a lot of times, because they're aware there's some mental issues going on, right? Unfortunately, with a lot of these people, self-harm behaviors are super super prominent, right? So then that puts you on edge because you're scared. You're like, you don't want this person to self-harm, right? You know, ideation, self-deletion, ideation, I don't want to say the word. So then that kind of puts you against the wall because then you're thinking like, you don't want this person to do anything stupid, right? And that's always in the back of your mind. You're constantly on edge to make sure that this person does not do something that will harm them, right? And so this is just to say that a lot of times they will use sort of these issues that they know to create an image about you, and this is called, there's a word for it. I can't remember exactly what the word is, but it's devaluing. Okay, they devalue. They totally devalue you with using these small minimal issues that they know they can get away with, right? And so a lot of times they'll create this image of you that you're some absolute monster. Um, you speak like this, you do this, you do that, you don't treat them well, all these things. And it's pretty clear to see when it's a form of devaluing, when like if you're someone that gets therapy and you keep people close around you, and everyone around you has a certain image of you, right? And everyone says you're a very nice person, super respectable, you don't say stupid things, you don't do stupid things. But this one person who you think is supposed to be on your side is saying the complete opposite. That is just a form of devaluing. And so a lot of times when it comes to these people, there's cycles, right? Especially with BPD. There will be the first initial phase of love bombing, and then there'll be devaluing, and then there's going to be a push-pull sort of phase of that, and then they'll push you away, say, I don't want this, I don't want that, and then they'll bring you back in. And the final phase when it comes to both BPD and NPD is the discard, right? And so this is why I made the distinction in a previous video between breakups and discards. The final phase is a discard. They'll usually over text or something because they don't have the balls to, do what they know is right, So they'll just say, peace out, I'm done with this, and just, totally just dip out, right? And so that's why in the beginning of the video I said that a lot of these characteristics have a lot in common with avoidant attachment disorder, right? And so a lot of these times people will lie a lot without knowing they'll lie, right? A huge common, something in common with all of them is broken promises that they can't keep, right? All these promises that they made, all these different things, they create an image of a certain person and totally flip. And this is just for their own ability to cope, right? And so there's a lot of ways. There's ways to almost protect yourself, and I feel like when you're dating in 2025, you got to do background checks, and you have to be ready to cut losses, right? And so one huge clue is that when people around this individual are super on eggshells, right? If you and I are having a conversation, I'm talking to anyone, it shouldn't be evident that person is totally walking on eggshells and trying to make sure they say the right thing, right? And so if you notice that some of the closest people in these people's lives are just being super careful with what they say and how they say things, and just they're like extra nice and things like that, it's because they don't want to feel the wrath, they don't want to get absolutely destroyed by this person. So that's one way to check. Another thing is just see the patterns in other relationships, right? Has this person ever been the problem? Has this person ever admitted that they've done something wrong? A lot of times people like that will constantly put the blame on other people because they don't have the maturity to deal with it on their own. And so it takes a certain kind of mental health professionals to do this. And so they'll say, yeah, I'm getting help, I'm getting professional help, I'm getting therapy, this and that. Um, but once again, unfortunately, therapy is not going to undo these behaviors. Therapy is going to make these people more able to cope with these behaviors. They can cope better internally, but a form of them coping is by putting it on you, right? And so another massive thing is projection. These people will project massively, huge, like almost most of the things they say will be projections. Um, for example, they can't admit that the things that they were saying were super hurtful and they were lying and things like that. So they'll put it back on you. They'll say what you're saying is super hurtful. What you're saying is this, and you're a liar. They'll put everything on you. And so if you notice that someone is saying exactly how they're acting and they're putting it on you, that's a sign of projection. That it's just hard to cut your losses with these type of people. Um, because the highs and the lows and the push pull and the love bombing becomes addicting, right? Your brain gets used to all the dopamine that it gets from, being in a situation. The physical intimacy is good, everything is great, right? And then when they pull back, this is them hacking into your dopamine system to and it's just like withdrawing from a drug, right? They're almost knowingly becoming a drug to you. And so they're hacking into the system and they're trying to essentially get you hooked. And this is why it's so hard to let go with these people. And a lot of times, these people with BPD, or they're avoidant, right? And so avoidant people a lot of times will find an anxious person that will, because that's just the dynamic, right? Yin and yang, whatever. An anxious will find an avoidant will find an anxious. And so um, it's likely that you're anxiously attached, right? And so it just makes everything way significantly harder. If you have been in a situation where you've just been so devalued, this image of you has been created that you're some monster when you know you're not, you do the right things, you get things done, you go to therapy, you're connected with God, you're spiritual, everything. I want this to be a message to let you know that you're not crazy. It's not you. Um, people have their own internal struggles that they can't deal with, and so if you're very close to someone, unfortunately, because you're that next level of closeness, a lot of it is going to be taken out on you. And so a lot of times with people like this, another thing is that they will love long distance relationships, right? And so in reality, who really I hate to say it, but who really likes long distance relationships, right? Maybe certain people, for whatever reason, works out. But in general, I think most people want to see their significant other on a regular basis. So these people will just be obsessed with the idea of long distance. They get to do whatever avoidant BS they do on their own. And so they'll give you the bare minimum by seeing you a couple days of the week. And so they'll use that as another tactic. They'll say, I'm traveling, I'm doing this and that, and I come to see you and look at how this is going, and that'll make you feel crazy because you're getting the absolute bare minimum of seeing the person you love for a couple of days. So God forbid you hang out with your significant other when you're long distance for a couple of days. So be careful of things like this. There's a lot of patterns. It's hard to avoid things like this. So most of the times you'll figure this out once you're in the situation itself. But if you have any sort of doubts or anything, these are things that you cannot mess with because they'll create crazy illusions and lies and promises and say, I'll never leave you, I'll never do this, I'll never do that, we're here together. And these are all tactics for them, and whether they know it or not, these are all tactics for them. And their avoidant will tap in and something will trigger it and boom, they're gone, right? And so you're left destroyed. So I want to shed the light on this because these types of relationships will literally ruin someone's life, completely ruin someone's life, ruin someone's mental health, will send people into crazy mental health crises, and so I just want people to be aware so that it doesn't ruin someone. It doesn't ruin someone to a certain degree, right? Yeah, so I just hope you are not super ruined. I hope you can become aware of this, this dynamic, and you can use it so that it doesn't ruin you. A lot of times when they create this image and all this stuff, you're left to think like, am I really a monster? Am I really like this? Am I really like that? And so it takes a bit of time to get professional help and talk to the people around you to realize that, like, a lot of times it's not you. And I'm not going to say everyone's perfect. A lot of times people can say hurtful things. A lot of times people can make mistakes, right? A lot of times people can say hurtful things, all that. If you're doing all the right things to better yourself, then what else can you do, right? A lot of these times people will put that over your head, right? And you're doing absolutely everything, but it's not enough, so who wants to be with someone that is constantly downplaying what they do? Even the biggest 110% efforts that you put are not enough for this person. So, and at the end of the day, all that matters is effort. If you're someone that's putting in your effort all the time, if you're someone that, you're doing your thing, what else can you do? I get it. Some people have shortcomings when it comes to certain things, but if you're really truly trying your best, then what else can someone ask for? So every rejection is a redirection. I think it's important for people to learn to deal with such people at some point in their lives, because there's a lot of personal growth. If you're the type of person to say, screw it, I'm going to do this for the character development or whatever, meme there is, be careful. Be very careful, because it could be fun, whatever the case is, but just these things really destroy people. So yeah. Another thing with certain people in cluster B personality, BPD, NPD, is that a lot of times they'll be incredibly good at what they do for work, right? Their work life will be awesome. Their school, everything they'll be dialed in. They'll be awesome. And so that kind of gives the false illusion that, everything's perfect, things are going well. But then when it comes to their interpersonal relationships, they just discard people, and being discarded is not good at all, not a good feeling, to say the least. And I've made this distinction in a couple of videos ago. A breakup is when two people come to an agreement and say, yeah, I agree, these problems sort of aren't the best, I don't know if we can deal with it, I don't know if we're compatible, and you just part ways, right? Like mature adults that we are. A discard is when someone completely love bombs you, and they involve themselves in your life, your family life, they do all these things, and one day everything is perfect, and the next day, just like that, they send a text, they're gone, right? And so yeah, just be careful. Once again, you're not crazy. You're worthy of love from someone that's not going to make you feel like you're the problem. You're worthy of healthy love. You're worthy of being surrounded by people that uplift you. And yeah, that's all I have to say. If there's any other topics, I'll probably pop back in and bring something up. But if there's anything you want to say, drop it in the comments. I'm always responding to comments. And yeah, I'm always going to stand up for abusive relationships. You should, especially as a man, you should never feel like you're stuck in an abusive relationship, because that can get really dangerous. So yeah, I wish you all the best. today's homework. I said in the last 3 videos, go give a little bit of charity, whether it's 1 penny, whether it's $1, give a little charity and give back to the community. And yeah, I hope everyone is doing well, and I'll catch you back in the next video. And yeah, peace out.